when the recording starts, repeat that. It hasn't started there. There we go. Okay,
All
Victor.
right.
You were here a couple of 3 months ago, and you were saying that when you first started practicing, you experienced an awful lot of anxiety.
Yes. It was always part of my life, and I just thought that life just had to have anxiety. It was something like genetics and just my behavior. And in our first call, you're talking about gladdening the mind and having a more carefree approach towards life. But during panic attacks and anxiety, that's very hard to do. So I couldn't just fathom like how one could even start doing it because I'm like, oh, it's not happening for me. So then I started practicing. I actually went to a retreat and my practice, formal practice, started picking up, and suddenly it just have my mind just much clearer. And now I'm like, okay, I can now try to actually start contemplating those concepts because it even felt like a superpower. I'm like, wow. And before I thought anxiety was helping me be more productive, but then you realize how counterproductive anxiety really is, it's just because it just fogs the mind and you just can't do anything. So I'm in a much better phase now. And now I wanted to actually talk a bit more about the Sukramundane Dharma and like the concepts and try to internalize them a bit better. I think now I have a stronger foundation to work with.
Okay. All right. Well, it's kind of let's just talk about it like this. The anxiety that is there normally when people start practicing anapanasati, they run into a wall of anxiety, but basically the wall was always there. The anxiety was already there, and that we were living our lives according to it, but ignorant of it. All right. Um, it here. Let us do it this way. A simple little thing. Imagine that you've got grandma's car, and grandma goes to shopping, and she goes here and there and other places in her car, and then the teenage, or perhaps no, a professional race car driver, somebody who really knows, he gets in that car and drives it around the block and comes back with a whole long list of things that are wrong with it.
Okay.
Right? All he had to do was to drive it, and he can feel that the suspension on the left front needs to be fixed and that kind of thing. All right. So, um, basically, what we're talking about is that knowledge, by investigation, by looking, is the right way to go. And you're saying that now that you've gotten the mind settled down, you're wanting to contemplate things. Is that the word that you used?
Yeah, I wanted to get specifically into the gladdening of the mind concept because that's still a bit abstract to me. People say, "Oh, you need to gladden the mind." I'm like, how do I? Like you just. I'm not sure if it's like a feeling or if it's just like trying to be glad about things that I have in life, but then I'm afraid of running into like attachment and just conditioning my happiness to things that
All
are
right.
happening.
Well, let's go down that road just a little bit. The gladdening of the mind, those words actually is pointing at something, and that it's actually in a section that is talking about the states of mind. And this is where information from other sutras can also come in and help, especially the Satipatthana Sutta, when it talks about noticing the state of mind that we're in. Is the mind dull? Is it sharp? Is it deluded? Is it greedy? In other words, when it's affected by hindrances, it's in a different state than when it's not affected by hindrances.
Mhm.
And so the gladdening of the mind actually is not just words that we use, it's to change the state of mind that we're in.
Okay.
Okay. An example of that would be maybe an old person, or maybe you pulled a late night, or something like that. And so getting or waking up in the morning, and the thoughts of tiredness, the thoughts of oh no, etc., like that happen. But then some thought occurs, and we actually are able to get up. Now, that new thought means a new state of mind, because the state of mind that we were in, we couldn't even get out of the bed. I feel bad, okay? And so we can, in fact, change the state of mind that we're in. This is just another example of it. Um, you're tooling down the road having a conversation, and all of a sudden you see the blue and red lights, and you hear the wow, and your state of mind changes immediately. Okay, so the change of mind, the state of mind, affects the thoughts, and the thoughts affect the state of mind. And so by using gladdening thoughts, we can, in fact, change the state of mind that we're in. And by changing the state of mind that we're in, we can also then affect the way that we feel. That these things are all integrated together. And by experimenting with it, you begin to see how one affects the other. That in fact, if you can't fix this, you can at least fix that, which will help fix this.
Mhm. Okay.
hmm
Um,
Um, so uh, once we get the mind cleaned out, the only thing to do is to keep cleaning it out. That's where the insight comes. The insight comes from the inspection, continuing inspection. Is this thought worth having? Is that thought worth having? And that basically what you're asking is what comes next, all right? What comes next actually is now a dissatisfying thought. When we have this is good enough, now we're in satisfaction. But once we get into that satisfaction, it's very Western of you to start asking what's next, especially since we have an idea of what's next. All right. And
okay.
that in fact, within our conceptualized world, we think that what we need to do then is contemplate. And in fact, that's what Christian meditation is really all about, is contemplation. All right. Or another way of saying it is living in concepts, connecting this concept to that concept, putting a bigger story together, etc., like that. And that here we're not interested in concepts or conceptualizing or of, let us say, like a Nietzsche, conceptualizing a Nietzsche. That's not what we're doing here. We're investigating a nature, not contemplating it. This is not a contemplation exercise. This is an observational exercise. And that in that particular moment, what needed to be observed was this thought, what's next? That's what we should have seen, is that thought too is unwholesome. Out it goes. I'm having too much fun right now to want don't want to go, let us say, make up stories about things that I thought that I had already seen before and figured out.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, because that's going back into the conceptualization, or back into the thought process that we were intending to clear out in the first place. But
Mhm.
congratulations, that's what everybody does. Everybody gets a little bit of progress. And then instead of continuing doing that, they want to say, well, I got that now. What's next?
Yeah. I one question that I have is that like how does that so sometimes how do I enjoy practice but at the same time just maintain a hatefulness on like whether I'm on the right track or whether I'm actually practicing concentration or if I'm just letting get myself carried away. So that's usually what I have some trouble with,
In a most profound way, concentration, or other words like absorption, is exactly being carried away. That the Buddha did not teach concentration. Nowhere in it is there any concentration. But Western Buddhism has stumbled across this word, concentration, because of a bad translation. We're, and let me go into this a little bit because this is an important point. The actual word from the Pali is the word samadhi. It's probably one of the, when people learn 10 or 12 Pali words, samadhi is going to be one of them along with nibbana. Okay. And the samadhi and nibbana are both wrongly translated.
okay.
Did that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has a little book called Nibbana for Everyone. And the example that I would use for that is that your average late middle aged factory worker comes home in the snow with his big heavy jacket on, walking a couple of blocks after he got off of the subway or something. He trudges into the house, he puts that big overcoat on the hanger, and he sits down in his easy chair. And for a couple of 3 seconds, he actually has nibbana. Nothing is going on. He takes a rest. It just doesn't last very long. But everybody has little nibbanas.
Okay.
Everybody has little nothingness's. We need to recognize those and see them when they occur and being able to duplicate the natural ones. All right? The same thing is even more true about the word samadhi in the sense that it's been wrongly translated. You see words like absorption, um, and concentration and other things like that that indicate that the person gets lost in it. So the example that I would use is years ago they used to have whack-a-mole machines in the corridors of the grocery stores for the kids to play, and it's a matrix of 16 by 16 holes that things pop up, dildos or something pop up out, and the job is to hit each one of them as it comes. Now, a little child can actually go to concentrate on one, let us say the lower left hand corner. If that mole comes up, we're going to get it, but we may miss all the others. But we'll at least get this one because we're concentrating on this one.
Okay.
All right. Or let us say somebody who really is pretty good at whack-a-mole, he's standing there getting them all, and his girlfriend can come right up behind him, and he doesn't even know she's there because he's concentrating on the whack-a-mole, right?
Mhm.
This is the down issue of concentration. We're not intending to try concentration at all. In fact, what we normally do is we concentrate on things when we should be paying attention to other things. An example of that is that the teacher stops the lecture and looks in the back of the room and says, Johnny, pay attention, because Johnny is daydreaming. She says, stop daydreaming. Stop looking out the window. In the old days, schools all had a whole bunch of windows. Now I don't think they have windows anymore because they don't want the kids looking out the window. They want them to pay attention, right? They want them to concentrate.
Right.
Exactly. All right. So this whole quality of concentration then has an extra problem to it because whatever we're concentrating on means that that's the only thing that we're getting and we're missing everything else. And it's a
Mhm.
big, wide, wonderful world out there. All right. And so you've also heard the concept of taking an object of meditation or taking a focal object, even say a meditation object or a concentration object,
Yes.
right? We're learning to do that, but not by going deeper and deeper and deeper into one object, like a casino meditation, a fire meditation, or something, but rather we're learning how um, to control the mind, manipulate the mind by moving it around, and stop getting lost in something. Stop getting, how to say, enamored with something. So
Mhm.
um, here's two examples. The kid who was, let us say, 7 or 8 years old, his dad has told him, "You can't play on the computer. It's time for you to go to sleep." And so here the kid is with his computer on, the lights are on, he's not in bed, and he hears his dad coming down the hall. And as he hears his dad coming down the hall, flick the switch, turn the monitor off, jump into bed just as the dad's coming into the room, right?
Okay.
Okay. Now let's fast forward it a few years. The kid's a little older. Now he's sitting in front of the computer screen, writing code. His dad comes down the hall. His dad opens the door. The dad says, "Good night, son." And the kid doesn't lift his head from the computer. He's still writing his code. His dad gets pissed off, storms out of the room. "You don't love me anymore," right? Okay. So, in that regard, concentrating is not all of that great. We need to pay attention. Dad might be coming down the hall any second now. All right, let's be open. Let's start listening. Let's start being in our senses rather than being in our head.
Okay.
So, the first example, the kid was actually listening. He knew that he could get into trouble, and so he is paying attention to what's going on. Later, he's lost in his code, he's lost in thought, he's concentrating on it, and that's causing trouble.
Mhm.
So when you understand it like that, let's go one step further into that. The Zen stick. Do you know about the Zen stick? You've heard about Zen masters and Zen sticks, right? The, basically, the Zen stick is about a 2 foot or 3 foot long piece of bamboo that's been split and slit down the middle so that at the end of the stick there's a small little gap. And that gap compresses air. So when someone is hit, it sounds ferocious, but it's the stick making its own sound, not the shoulder getting broken. Okay.
Okay. Never
Who
heard of
is
this.
who is it that gets hit with the Zen stick? If you were
Um,
the Zen master and you were walking around, who would you hit with that stick? Did you freeze or are you just thinking? Okay, no, you froze. All right. So, if you were the Zen master, who would you hit with that stick?
the person falling asleep.
All right, that's one of them. Let us say that we can do the general collection in the sense of anybody who does not know that the Zen master is right behind them gets hit with the
Oh,
stick.
okay.
Whether he is in what he would call deep meditation, or whether he is concentrating, or whether he's drowsy, or whether he's asleep, or any of those kind of things. And the whole point of the Zen stick is to wakey wakey. This is what sati is really all about, is to
Okay.
remember to come out of the mind into the reality of our senses over and over and over again. And
Mhm.
so this is what anapanasati then is, to be mindful of the breathing, because the breathing is done in a reality. Breathing is
Okay.
real. Okay, so paying attention to the breathing means that we're actually developing sati on the in breath and sati on the out breath so that we can remember to take a long, deep in breath and take a long, deep out breath. And that means then that the rest of the in breath, the mind can wander away. And then the rest of the out breath, the mind can wander away. But if it's not, let us say, a breath with sati of a long, deep breath, then the mind just wanders and wanders and wanders while the breathing is not being watched. But if we're watching and remembering to take each breath a long, deep breath, that means that the mind cannot wander very far.
Okay.
And Another way of looking at it is that you cannot even control your breath to make it a long, deep breath unless you're already controlling the mind. The mind is controlling the breath. And so by you intentionally controlling the breath, you're already syncing the mind and the body together as one in a unification.
One question that I have is that when I close my eyes, it's like I'm entering a war zone, and I can suddenly be very aware of my mind just going all over the place. And I try to start with a breath, and sometimes like I'm aware that I'm meditating, so I have some sati, but I can't just follow the breath properly. I'm not sure what exactly I'm supposed
I
to be
I
doing.
I hear your language. War zone. Okay? I hear your language that this is hard to do, right? That you have to work hard at it. These are hindering words. These kind of thoughts hinder you from making progress. Oh, this is hard is the kind of language that a victim would use. A war zone is the kind of language that a victim would use. So changing your language is, oh, we've got a very interesting playground, not a war zone. Okay? The mind is a wonderful playground to experience, to enjoy, to investigate safely.
Got it.
So you're actually intending or going into the point about that there is a lack of safety somewhere in there. Calling it a war zone means that you don't feel safe.
Okay.
And
Um,
using words like war zone, of course, you're not going to feel safe.
I I think it's just that having experienced a moment, a week of peacefulness, and not so much suffering. I think one of the reasons why I'm not feeling safe is that I'm afraid that I'm gonna lose the way, or I'm gonna go back to just the suffering. So I'm like, I need to guarantee that I can. So yeah, in a way, it's like me trying to control my practice, and just make 100% sure that
I
that
know. Okay. Right. So that making sure that redoubling, etc., like that, that's again pointing out and showing that you're coming from the victim's position, that anything can go wrong, right? It's
yeah,
almost like, imagine this, you've seen people do build house of cards. You know,
yeah,
they bend the card in a certain way so it gets a kind of stiffness and then it'll hold a little bit of structure, but eventually it falls apart.
yeah.
No card house stays that way. And in fact, they're really hard to construct and easy to break. But it's fun to do it when you know that it's going to fall apart. You see, what you're doing is you made your own card house as if it were important, and you're afraid that it'll fall apart. And oh, if my card house falls apart, I've got to go build it again. No, you don't. You're building it the first time because you were having fun at it. So this is the whole point is that our Western society has made everything important, has work to do, and we've taken all the childhood fun out of life. Put the fun back into it by seeing everything as a new toy to play with, including anxiety, including the wandering mind. This is just a toy to play with. And by doing that, by changing that, we're actually changing our attitude from being a loser who has very important, difficult work to do and anything can fall apart into a child that's just messing around, having fun with nothing is important.
Okay, that was clear enough. I'm laughing because it's like this is relatable. You know, the way you're talking about like building up like a house of cards, but it's kind of like what I'm trying to do. It's like, oh, I need a guarantee that like the practice is gonna stay this way, but it's like an unsustainable thought, I guess.
E-
So yeah,
Exactly. And also, you were going in that same direction when you were talking about contemplation.
yeah,
That's just more card building,
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right. Uh, and
Good.
and
Good.
and so we can begin to recognize that we've got a choice about how we feel. We've got a choice about being either the victim or being the winner, being successful. That we're working on changing the language that we have to feel safe and secure and successful. And we need to practice that over and over again. And when we get good at that, keep doing it.
Okay. Yeah,
That
I thought it was like, oh, go ahead.
the teaching of the Buddha is very, very simple. There's just not much to it. We just need to just keep cleaning, keep this thought, this thought, this thought. Um, that in fact, if I use an example of cleaning your bedroom until the whole room is empty, also has a misunderstanding because it looks like that it's a job that needs time to do. No, it does not need any time to do it. Everything is done right now. So it's not a matter of the whole house of cards that we're building. It's this card. Can we put this card in the house without it falling down? Just this one moment, one thought at a time. This is how we're working rather than looking at it from the long direction, which a lot of people do. I mean, there are the stories that people say, well, I put in 10,000 hours of meditation and look what a good teacher I am. And another one says, oh, I put in 100,000 hours of meditation and I'm still waiting for the bliss to come, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that like um, just enjoying the practice would mean slacking off, but with what you're saying, I can get that it's just like accept the challenge. It's not like just slacking off. It's just accepting the challenge and actually just taking joy in the practice. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That you, in fact, can do this and it's fun and easy to do.
Yeah.
One more time, okay? And then we can say that we put the toys away and have to deal with the adults in the room and we go back into bad feelings because they see everything is important. Put that card deck away. You clean your room. You do what you're told to do. Okay. Uh, and so everything winds up being important. But here we can look at, oh no, we're going to actually find out what is important. What is actually important is, well, let's put it this way. If you were dead, what would be important?
Right. Yeah.
Once you're dead, things don't matter anymore. Okay.
Um,
Making a will is something that a man alive does. The dead man don't think about wills.
yeah.
Okay, so here's the point. Being alive then is kind of important because only when you're alive can anything be important. So the only important thing is being alive. And the next part of that means is that the only thing that's going to keep you alive is this next breath. You've got a death sentence. You're going to die within 3 minutes, but you can get a reprieve. You can take the next breath. You can stay alive. If we put that understanding into our practice, that it's actually important for us to take this next breath. And that's the only thing that is important, is being alive. And the next point is that, yeah, so many people are alive out there and they're not enjoying it, that it's almost like that car that they want to buy is more important than being alive. All right? So the next point is that, well, so what's about being alive if you're not even there for it? So being alive and knowing that you're alive and experience being alive and experiencing the body right here, right now, that's the only thing that's important. It's being alive and experience being alive. And yet our society has showed us 10,000 things that are more important than just being alive.
Um,
10,000 things are important. You know, that car is important, the house is important, paying the bills is important, taking the dog to the vet's important, just over and over and over again. All of this important stuff. And we become victimized by all the things that are important. But wisdom
um,
will show none of those things are important. What's important is enjoying this next breath.
I'm dumbfounded with how people just, the more I just, I can see things more clearly, especially when you can get a calm mind. It's just very perplexing how the whole of society can just be going like in another direction and just valuing some things that just did not really bring proper happiness. In our first call, you mentioned something along those lines, just enjoying life, and people just they just put on like a hard face and just a self-flagellating attitude. And then at the time, I wasn't really buying it, like just properly buying it. But now I'm like, every day I question myself, like, how can there be so much just self-inflicted suffering, especially like I see at work, people just think that, oh, I need to work more, I need to be like a hard worker, and they just don't even know exactly what they're doing that for. So it's very that part is becoming very clear to me, like that this the enjoying life is simpler than it sounds, but it's it's just sometimes it's so hard that just there are a lot of people going against what you're doing. So like your social reptilian brain is kind of just asking itself, oh, shouldn't just so many people are doing something, so shouldn't you also do that? So you kind of start questioning this attitude of just let's enjoy life because you're like, oh, nobody's enjoying their life, so there must be something wrong with my theory here. So so maybe it's just overcoming this voice that's supposedly rational, but doesn't really help us just get better, like in the long run. So
Mm. Yeah,
yeah,
you kind of mentioned the idea of how am I doing, Daddy? How am I doing? Okay, what that means is that the child is kind of comparing himself to the rules that we've set up, how things are supposed to be. Then, in fact, um, you probably heard about within Buddhism that there is a big fetter that is called personality view. And then the second fetter is Sila Bhatta Paramasa, the rites, rules, and rituals. Okay, so these two fetters work very, very closely together, just as how am I doing, Daddy? That's the child, the person, the personality asking that second fetter, how am I doing? All right, so here we can say then that here is personality, a very good definition of personality is all of the rules, all the rights, all the supposed tos, coupled with how each individual reacts to them. So everybody has their own set of internal rules, and they also have their own internal reaction to those rules.
okay.
And we make those rules kind of important because, I mean, we've been told, we've been taught, we've been beaten, we've been belted, we've been slapped, we've been hit, we've been punished 10,000 ways to try to prove to us that rules are important. All right. Well, guess what? Now the rules have defined who we are. That when we present ourselves to the world, we don't present ourselves the raw me. We present ourselves according to a set of standards, a set of rules, a set of the way that I'm supposed to present myself. And everybody does that. Okay? So whenever we address someone and we talk to them, we actually are not addressing them, actual, the real owner deep down inside of that person. We are in fact addressing our own ideas of who they thought that they wanted to present to us. So in fact, when you're talking to somebody, you're just talking to that person as if they were in your own head. The real person is different. Now, that could be used as a great advantage because when Granny is fussing at us, she's only fussing at her own idea. She's not fussing at the real you, that you're something different, that what she's fussing at is what you presented to her, not the real you. And you accept that in the real you is the one who feels bad when she's fussing. And she's only fussing about the rules, and she only knows you, and you only know you because of the rules, but the one who feels bad is the little kid inside. So we need to work with these two things to recognize that we need to stop abiding by a set of rules about how things are supposed to be and start living more of a child's life of investigating the realities of the moments to become intimate rather than obnoxious,
Okay.
to really get involved in the sense of knowing, of seeing, of doing. So um, we can take that whole idea deeper. But one of the things that we can, at least in this talk, do, and then go to the deeper stuff later, is to
Mhm.
recognize that you have a choice in every moment. When someone is criticizing, they don't necessarily have the ability to criticize you. They're criticizing their idea of you, which is probably wrong. In other words, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune will almost always miss the target. But we got to stand up and become the target, and then we can get hit. That we
Okay.
actually do that. We actually, instead of just letting the slings and arrows of outrageous, well, that was nice, that's interesting, go right by, we just stand up and say, that's me, and then get hit with that arrow.
Okay.
We get in our own way because why? Because we have decided that we are indeed who all of our rules, all of our supposed tos are. But
Mm.
when we begin to recognize, no, you are not your set of rules. You are not stuck. That you can change. The Buddha's model is a definite change model. And when do we change? Right there with that right effort, the right noble effort to get the heck out of the way of the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, whether they're coming out of Granny's mouth or whether we dreamed them up.
Okay. Yeah,
It,
that's a great that's a great metaphor, actually. Um, I'm not. Do you intend on elaborating on that, or am I supposed to?
um, yes, well, here's a way of looking at it. Then I will go a little bit deeper since you've asked. We actually, this is actually in the U.S. This is legal code in the United States. I learned about this stuff from a high class lawyer in Washington D.C.
Mm.
Okay, and it had to do with the coal mining industry, but it has ramifications everywhere. And the three items are the owner, the controller, and the agent. Now, these in legal sense are real people. Normally, in the coal, this is because of the Land Reclamation Act, where they wanted the people to plant trees over the bad coal mines, right?
Mm.
But and that the rule was is that you can't get a new permit until you clean up the old mine, reconstitute, reclaim the land. Okay, so
Mhm.
who's going to do that? Who's going to do that? The owner? Well, guess what? The owner is Aunt Susie. She's never been to that site. She doesn't know anything about it. Her name just kind of got on there so that the real people who were running the place don't get in trouble because they don't own it. Okay. So
Mhm.
now you come into the controller. So you have the owner and the controller. The controller is the one who is not technically the owner, but he's the one who runs the place. He's the one who makes the decisions as to whether we're going to reclaim the land or not. And then
Mhm.
you have the third group where the agents who don't own the land, They don't control the land, but they deal with the government. We have, in fact, a lot of different agents. One of the primary agents in the U.S. is lawyers. Nobody wants to go into court alone and do it on their own. They want help. They want an agent, okay? So,
Okay.
in this regard, we can see then that the child inside of us is the actual owner of our lives, where we
Mhm.
feel, long, etc., like that. And then we have this set of rules that we've learned all of our lives. So think about that. It's the DNA is the owner, the child, the reptilian mind, the part that feels. Um, but the rules are very much like the contents of that bucket, and the contents can get very heavy. And so
Mhm.
the contents of the bucket determine how the bucket's going to be used. The content of the bucket determines the bucket, not the bucket itself.
Mhm.
Okay, if you can understand that concept, now we can bring in the third one, which is the agent. And the agent's job is to protect the owner, basically to protect the owner from the contents. All right, how does that work? Well, we can see then that if the real owner of our life is the instincts, the feelings, the anterior cortex of the brain. And then we see that it's the mammalian brain or the temporal cortex, the mid part, that has all of the concepts, all of the codes, all of the contents of the mind, verbally, conceptually, and all of that. And then we have the frontal cortex, which is the actual witness, that which can see, that which can put two and two together, right?
Mhm.
That's the agent. And
Right.
what we're looking for is to put the agent in gear to nurture and care for the child and deflect the child and deflect the incoming so that the child doesn't get wounded. And mostly we're protecting the child from the contents or the rules or the way things that are supposed to be, the parent. So the parent starts off with a child being nurturing, but by the time the child is 3 or 4 years old, especially by the age of 6, now the child is put to work. The concepts and the rules and how to do things gets heaped upon the child. That when we're really young, we're just happy and joyful and play all the time, and then we're put to work,
Mhm.
right? So we need now to bring this agent back in to help the child deal with all of the world and its rules and rights and rituals and supposed tos and the whole culture, and that we need an agent, someone who can wake up to protect the child, to wake up, to bring that frontal cortex, to bring the human part of the mind into it, and to protect the child so that the child feels safe. The child feels unsafe because of all the rules that are listed. Go do this, go do that. You can't have your ice cream until you eat your peanut butter, all of that kind of stuff, all of these rules. You can't have dessert until you eat your broccoli. Instead of saying, hey, why don't you really enjoy that broccoli? That broccoli's good stuff. Just pay attention to it, taste it. Maybe even put your pudding with it.
Right.
Make a broccoli chocolate ice cream or, whatever like that, like a kid would do. But no, the rules are no, you've got to eat the broccoli before you have I mean, that's not in every household, but I think that it's pretty universal that the moms go around telling the kids what they're supposed to eat first.
Yeah.
Silly rules that don't mean anything, but they're part of the culture.
Yeah.
So when we
And there is.
recognize that almost all of our culture is built up of silly rules,
Yeah.
and we wind up being in a lot of pain and giving each other a whole lot of pain because we apply these silly rules and instead of applying the Buddha's rule. Buddha's got only one rule: dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Wake up and see what you're doing and make a change to come out of it. That's the only teaching of the Buddha. Wake up, take a look, make a change, and feel good about it.
Okay. That makes sense. So the agent would be, I know this is very abstract, but it'd be like just what really makes you try to follow Dhamma and just because it's self-imposed. So the owner will be the one imposing the rules like on the child, and the agent would be like this other voice that was
Your higher self, your wisdom,
okay.
the one who's actually been to real law school, not the dunce uncle who's telling you what to do.
Okay.
Okay, so we could say that it's our own higher mind, it's our wisdom, it's the ability to know and see reality, and the job of that agent is to protect the child from all the bullshit that comes out of the parent, as well as all the other parents out there, because everybody lives presenting themselves as this super ego. I'm who I am because I'm supposed to be that way. Is how we present ourselves.
Yeah. It's funny how like there's this voice that just portrays itself as being rational even though like deep down, so I think the agent is the one that deep down knows that you've been through that like the past 10, 15 times and that approach didn't work of like anxiety and just self-flagellation, but it's this just this voice telling you, oh, this time you need to be just, you need to be worried, you need to be very anxious about this. But then like there's this other voice that's just like, no, this is, it doesn't make any sense. So I guess that'd be like the agent
Right, right. So no, you don't have to be uptight. No, you don't have. Everything's already okay. So
got it.
that nurturing quality is what we're bringing out to be able to remember wisely that you're okay, that everything is all right, that you are safe, you are sound, you are secure, you are
Okay.
comfortable. And when we have that, then we can generate also the feeling of being satisfied, that this is good enough. And we're looking for that state of satisfaction, that I can rest because the job that needed to be done has been done. The well done job, even in the old days of the plantations, that when sundown came, the foreman would shout something out, and then everybody who was out there picking cotton would generally sit down. They would just stop what they were doing and just sit down and take a rest. They don't bother to come out of the field and go home and wash their hands and change their clothes and then rest. They just sit down right where they are and just, the job has been done. Okay.
Got it.
So, what is the job to be done? The job to be done is to call off the work. Time to finish. Stop. Stop all of the working. Stop all of the desiring. Stop everything and just sit down and enjoy the moment. Rest.
That's cool.
The
That's
job
great.
has just been done.
Okay, I get it now.
That's actually in the sutras, by the way, that the job that has to be done has been done. There is nothing left to do. And
Okay,
what is
there's a
that?
bunch of
Yeah. And the only thing we have to do is to throw out the hindrances, to throw out our to-do list. Imagine that you just sit down for 30 minutes or so with a to-do list and write down everything. You can actually call it a bucket list. Okay. What have I got to do? What are my things to do? Okay, so we get that list of all, and maybe 3, 4 pages long. And to now, according to the teaching of the Buddha, what are we going to do? We're going to wad that list up, set it down, and says, job done. All of those things are not important. They don't need to be done. What needed to be done was to set them down, to put them away, to stop having the idea that I've got to do and I've got to do and I've got to do, because that's all that culture, that's all that sila bhatta paramasa is, attachment to the way things are supposed to be, rather than enjoying the heck out of things the way that they actually already are.
That's great. The first time you mentioned the metaphor, like in the Sangha call, it wasn't clear to me, but now like it's just pretty just palpable in a way. I'm gonna try to apply that like from now on and just see through the charade of like, oh, the thing that helped me most is just this explaining of the attachment to rules and just how things are supposed to be, because that's how we grow up to just to feel like, right? And it's I was always just a very subservient like person, just needed just to be approved and validation. So this is definitely just definitely good to hear that it's not needed. So that was great, Dhammarato. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, you go practice this way as if the only thing that's important is to enjoy this present moment. This is it. This is all we've got. All the work that needed to be done right now, we don't have to do anything except just sit here and enjoy life. Taking this next breath. This is good enough. Let
Okay.
the future take care of itself.
Okay. That's great. I think I'm almost running into like the time. I'm not sure if you have a preset time or because we're already 53 minutes in. Um,
No, no. The let us say the hour is sort of like an indicator or a mile marker or whatever. But sometimes, especially when there's more than one on the video, it can go for an hour and a half or whatever like that. But we've been
okay.
doing about 51 minutes. This is good. This is a good
Okay.
time to stop. But the important point is that we're not here because of the clock. We're here because I
Yeah,
want to
I'm
see.
running control.
Yeah, we're here because I want to see that great big smile on your face, like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm going against the rule here, but I'm like, oh, what is Dhammarato thinking? Maybe Dhammarato's already looking at a clock and saying, oh my God, he's gonna just run past like the allotted time, and so yeah,
No,
that's.
no, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at your face. I'm looking at your joy. I'm looking at you. I've got it. That's what we're looking for.
That's really it. It's just I'm laughing, but it's just really like this is really incredible. It's just like just getting like just a very heavy weight out of off my shoulders. It's kind of like validation. It's like, oh, you can't just not worry about it. It's just like somebody needs to tell me that in order for me to just go, oh, maybe I can actually just not really take that too seriously. So yeah, this was definitely great. I think I can't even ask like a follow-up question because this is just such a high note that I'm ending. And I just I don't know. Yeah, I'm I'm not gonna say now. I'm gonna go start stumbling on my words, but
Well, go
this was
practice. Go play with it. Go have some fun with Anapanasati. Go enjoy breathing. Enjoy and talk to yourself about all this does feel really good. I can, in fact, experience this present moment. That's the way to practice. Okay.
okay.
So
Thank you so much, Dhammarato.
I hope to see you soon. Don't
Oh,
waste so long
totally.
next time. And also,
Yeah.
you can join our Sangha on the Skype. We have the Sangha US and the Sangha UK groups. And I invite you to join those to find some friends. We need
Of course.
Sangha here also. Okay.
Yes.
Got a lot of
Definitely.
friends
No.
here.
Yeah, count on me for that, Dhammarato. And again, I really like to just say thank you again because it was really helpful. So I really appreciate it.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Dhammarato. Bye bye. Have a great
Okay.
day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.